All right. Good afternoon. Welcome, and thank you so much for joining. We're going to start right away. I think we have started the recording. Yes, so that's perfect. My name is Lena Golubtsova. My pronouns are she, her. I manage some of the strategic programs at Toronto Arts Council, including Animating Historic Sites program that we are here to talk about today. For visual description, I'm a white woman in my late 30s. I have brown hair with some gray. In mid-length bob, I wear a white t-shirt, and I'm in a room with light green walls. I'm right now sharing my screen with the first slide on the screen currently with information about today's event. Animating Historic Sites information session from 1 to 3 p.m. On Zoom, it is ASL interpreted. This grants program supports arts programming in partnership with select museum and historic sites. And we're going to hear from these partners in a bit. The slide includes a black and white photo showing 4 dancers in plain-fitted clothes in a room with white walls and a large window, with a lot of sky and some trees visible through it. And this picture is from Blue Ceiling Dance, a grant recipient in this program in 2023. I am now switching over to the next slide, access acknowledgement. TAC is committed to improving accessibility in the arts and for the artists. In this session, ASL interpretation is available to the right of the shared screen for the duration of the session. There is also automated captions available. To turn them on, please select CC icon in the bottom right of your screen. You can enlarge any side of the screen by moving the split screen bar in the middle of the screen in the direction of the side of the screen you would like minimized. This information session has been envisioned and is now supported by Onika Powell, TAC Senior Manager, Outreach and Access. If you cannot see ASL interpreters, CC icon, or if you have any other tech or access concern, please message Onika in the chat. The chat box is available if you have a comment, and we also have a Q&A box if you have a question. During the Q&A portion of this webinar, you can raise your hand to ask to turn your mic on. Please post questions to presenters in Q&A box to make sure we don't miss anything. I will read all questions from this box during the Q&A portion of the session and will answer them, or will refer to my colleagues and partners to answer. During Q&A, you can also click raise your hand button to ask to turn the mic on, and we'll be able to ask your question verbally. Feel free to put questions in the chat as they come to you, but I will be unlikely to read them on as I go, but we'll be sure to address all of them. And then the chat box is for you to connect, make comments, introduce yourself if you wish, and also to connect to the hosts. This webinar is being recorded, and recording will be made available on our website and YouTube channel about a week after. The slides will be sent out to everyone who registered shortly after the session. I will also be adding some links to this chat for you. So no need to record or write anything down unless it's helpful for you. I have now switched to the slide titled Land Acknowledgement. Toronto Arts Council respectfully acknowledges the diversity of Indigenous cultures and their connection to the natural world. We're privileged to share. We honor the Wendat, the Anishinaabe peoples, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, most recently the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, and others who have walked this land or paddled these waters. We're grateful to the ancestors and elders of their peoples and to their descendants who live and work with us on the back of the great turtle. My next slide is showing the name of the program, Animating Historic Sites. And I should also make a comment that most of my slides moving forward will be text on a white background, and I will not be describing that unless there are any additional visual elements to the slide. In this case, we have four logos showing Toronto Arts Council logo, as well as our partners' logos, Toronto History Museums, Village at Black Creek, and Evergreen Brickworks. And the slide also shows the deadline of the program, which is July 8th, 2025. So for today's event, we will start with me covering the granting program, what it is and what it does, eligibility, how to apply, and so on. This is largely based on the program guidelines, which many of you might have seen. And, if you studied the guidelines very carefully, you might not hear a lot of new information for yourself in this portion. However, while I will be reading directly from the guidelines, I also will be paraphrasing, and you will also providing some additional context, and you will also be able to ask clarifying questions in Q&A. So hopefully that will be helpful, even if you are already well familiar with the guidelines. We will then hear from all the program partners who will introduce themselves and will tell you a bit about the museums and historic sites to give you an idea. We will then go into Q&A portion of the webinar, where all the questions from the Q&A box will be answered, hopefully, and you will also be able to ask questions to all presenters. We will aim to wrap by 2:30, but depending on your questions, it could go a bit longer, but no later than 3 p.m. The Q&A section might not be recording to preserve privacy of the attendees, depending on how it goes. But the presentation portion definitely will be available as a recording afterwards. So what is Animating Historic Sites? The first thing to know, it's a strategic program at Toronto Arts Council, and we have two main type of the program, strategic and discipline-based. Strategic means that you can get one of these on top of one other grant, which will be discipline grant. But more on that later, and we can talk about it if it applies to you specifically. But it's an important thing to remember if you're applying to multiple grants at TAC. This program provides grants of up to $30,000 to create and present free site-specific arts programming in any art disciplines. And all the projects will be located in designated historic sites and museums throughout Etobicoke, North York, Scarborough, East York, and York. This program is in partnership with Toronto History Museums, the Village at Black Creek, and Evergreen Brickworks. The program provides opportunities for Toronto artists to explore, interpret, and artistically respond to selected site. The deadline, as mentioned, is July 8th, and the project must take place at the assigned site, and importantly, it's only one site that you will need to select and kind of design your application around that particular site. What does this program support? It supports free site-specific programming that responds to and interprets the selected site or museum. Important aspect here, it has to be free of charge. So occasionally the event could be ticketed to, if you need to limit attendance for whatever reason, but there can be no charge associated with attending the event. Proposals with creative and critical takes on the sites and the historical narratives are welcome, as well as previously unexplored understanding of the sites. Programming may include activities such as exhibitions, installations, performances, concerts, screenings, readings, workshops, presentations of work in progress, community-engaged arts activities, and other arts programming. I often get a question about, can you please share the examples of the projects that were previously funded? And while you will hear in the webinar today some of those examples, the array of the recipients and possibilities in this program is so vast that it's not necessarily helpful to know what have been funded in the past. It's more important what your idea is and how it connects and responds to the site that you've chose to work with. Because there is really not kind of one type project that gets funded, not one scale or scope. It's really very, very diverse. The one thing to remember, permanent exhibitions and installations are not eligible. All funded projects will be produced by the grant recipients and hosted and supported by the partnering sites. And what we mean by that is that you come to the site to create artistic programming. And it's important to remember that in this case, you're not on the site as a commission project. You are producing your own event. You can have other partners. And of course, the hosting partner, one of the historic sites and museums, will be supporting you, but the ownership of the project will be with the artists who get the funding. What does this program offer? Of course, it's funding up to $30,000. This grant may cover up to 100% of project costs, including artist fees, equipment rental, materials, and other programming costs. Importantly, payment of professional artist fees is a requirement, and in the guidelines, you can find the links to some documents that outline industry standards. It may not be exactly in line with those documents, but this is there for you as a guide if you need it. Importantly, access to space at selected historic site and staff support is also part of the offer in this program, but both are subject to availability and capacity. So not everything that you will envision or include in your application necessarily will be doable, but the successful projects will be then brought to life in collaboration with the partners and to the degree to which they have capacity and availability to support. Projects can take place on site indoors and outdoors. Here, I would say that if you are thinking about outdoor programming, you would also need to, actually both, either indoors or outdoors, I'm sorry. It's important to understand how a particular site functions because not every site has an outside space that is directly attached to it. So sometimes it's city park. So it's important to kind of confirm those details ideally before applying. The site reserve the right to limit the in-kind services and resources. So for example, even though generally speaking, you're not paying for access in the space, but let's say if you need to access space after hours and the staffing is obviously will be required in that case, the artist will be responsible for covering those additional costs. As a recipient in this program, artists will also be covered under TAC liability insurance, so you don't need to worry about that. I did name the partnering sites, or rather I named our partners, Toronto History Museums, the Village at Black Creek, and Evergreen Brickworks. For Toronto History Museums, it's actually 5 sites that are participating in the program out of 10 Toronto History Museums, and it's Gibson House, Montgomery's in Scarborough Museum, Spadina Museum on Todmorden Mills, and you will hear a bit more about each of the sites shortly. Information and context for each of the sites can be found in the program guidelines. You can only apply for one site, and ideally, to be compelling, your proposal will be site-specific. And this is something that can be very open to interpretation. Sometimes artists come to the site tours at their chosen museum, and kind of they hear a story or something that the museum staff shares, and they take it as a central piece of their idea. And And it doesn't necessarily have to be related to the history as such. It can be site specific in a sense that it responds to architecture or to the community surrounding the site, or even the land itself and the geography of the site as it's located in the city. So it's really open to interpretation, but it's beneficial for the proposal to be site specific, though occasionally if you apply with something that theoretically could happen anywhere, you have a great project and you're just looking for a venue, it is possible to apply in that case as well. And sometimes it could be even funded, but that's not what this program necessarily was designed to do. Ideally, it's clear from your application why this project needs to happen here in this specific site and why it needs to happen now. And by now, we mean in 2026, because applying for this deadline, it will be for the projects to take place in 2026. So please visit the site and or speak with the site representative prior to finalizing your application. Some sites will post site tours, and the information about those will be added to TAC website, and also some sites will actually mention their planned tours in today's webinar. One thing I want to mention here is that the partnership between Toronto Arts Council and all the all the history museums and sites is structured in a way that you as an artist don't need to kind of seek approval or permission to apply and be in a particular site. Artists often ask me, do we need to confirm with the site before we apply? And no, you don't need a confirmation, because whether you receive a grant or not will depend on the peer assessed process that I will cover in a moment. However, it's good to know that theoretically, if funded, your project can take place and there will be no major challenges, which is why we recommend that you either visit the site to know exactly how it looks and what the reality of the site is, or better yet, have a chat with one of the site representatives to clarify some of the feasibility questions. With that in mind, please be mindful of workload on the staff at the partnering sites. When we say we encourage you to get in touch, it doesn't mean that the sites will have necessarily capacity to develop your project with you or to give you feedback on artistic merit of your project. It's mostly meant to ensure the feasibility and sometimes the fit of the proposed project to the site. So this is the map that shows the location of all participating sites across Toronto. This year, I'm getting a lot of questions about can I do some other historic sites? So just to be clear, this program, if you were to apply to it, it has to be a proposal for one of these 7 sites, and these 7 sites only for this year. The list of the participating sites occasionally changes. This year, we welcome back our partner, Evergreen Brickworks. But generally speaking, it's pretty stable from year to year, and other sites are not eligible at this time. So who can apply? This is an eligibility question, which includes general eligibility. In this case, individual artists, arts organizations, collectives working in any artistic discipline can apply. This is actually one of the few project grants at Toronto Arts Council that is open to individuals, arts organizations, and collectives. And I have to underline that arts organizations don't necessarily have to be incorporated, and collectives can be ad hoc collectives that you have a group of artists working together, either on an ongoing basis, or you just decided to apply together yesterday and you pick a name, and that's the collective, you can apply. First-time applicants are encouraged to discuss their eligibility with the program manager in advance of applying. So you can talk to me. You don't have to talk to me. It's just, sometimes it's helpful to ensure eligibility and to save your time. And of course, even if you're not a first-time applicant, but you have any questions, you're always welcome to get in touch with me. You know how we say professional individual artists are encouraged to or are eligible to apply. So the way TAC defines professional artists, it is someone who has developed their skills through training and or practice, is recognized as an artist by artists working in the same artistic field, actively practices their art, seeks payment for their work, and has a history of public presentation. We do approach this in a very flexible way, recognizing systemic injustices in the arts. Essentially, if you consider yourself a professional artist, it's very likely that it means that you are and that you are eligible to apply. Now, for individuals, we have a particular set of eligibility criteria. You must be Canadian citizen or permanent resident, or have an application pending for permanent resident status, or be a protected person. You also must be a resident of the City of Toronto for at least 1 year prior to the deadline, and live and work in Toronto for at least 8 months a year. Professional artists pursuing graduate studies may not apply for work related to their program of study. So you could be a graduate student and you could apply for this grant, but it should not be directly related to the subject of your study. Organizations and collectives, important eligibility criteria is that they have to be located in the City of Toronto. A post office box address cannot be used to meet this requirement. For collectives of 2 artists, both must be City of Toronto residents, and for collectives of more than 2 artists, the majority of members must be City of Toronto residents. Organizations and collectives must be incorporated nonprofit organizations or unincorporated collectives which operate on a nonprofit basis. And a collective is just defined as 2 or more artists working together under group name. An important thing to remember that group name on the application, if you do get a grant, you will need to be able to have a bank account with the same name. I am going to look at my note for this slide because there was something else I was going to share. Yes, so actually for this program, and it's not many programs that allow this, but not-for-profit organizations that are not arts-based are also eligible to apply to this grant program. For this to be eligible, projects must include the collaborative involvement of professional artists with community members, as well as the payment of professional artist fees. I'd like to talk about TAC Accessibility Grant. So when you apply for Animating Historic Sites grant, you will have your project budget. And then additionally, there is a tab, TAC Accessibility Grant, that allows you to request additional up to $5,000 on top of your project grant. And that is for projects involving deaf artists and artists with disabilities. This grant will provide up to a maximum of $5,000 towards accessibility costs for artists incurred during the project. Accessibility costs include, but are not limited to, a cell interpretation, audio description, closed captioning, communications assistance, attendant care, support workers, and equipment rentals or other supports required to meet artists' accessibility needs. Importantly, this grant does not cover accessibility costs for the audience. We hope that you will consider providing access to your audiences, and there is a field in the application that asks about that, but those costs will be coming out of the project budget, whereas TAC Accessibility Grant will cover access costs for the artists on the project. In addition to TAC Accessibility Grant, there is also application accessibility support, and this is to cover expense to support the writing of the application for applicants who are deaf or have a disability and need support to complete their grant applications. If you think that you might be eligible or just might benefit from this option, please get in touch and we will get you started with this. All right, so what is the process of the application? At this point, we're pretty early-ish in kind of the timeline. So now would be a good time to start with your application. The number one question probably will be to decide on the site. Today you will hopefully learn some information that will help you to decide on that if you haven't yet. But other than selecting the site, first thing to do is read the grant program guidelines, and I'm kind of covering those guidelines right now. So that's great. If anything is unclear, even after this webinar, get in touch and I will hopefully be able to clarify. Of course, read the site descriptions, create a TAC Smart Simple account if you don't have one yet. And now read the grant application carefully, which I put here separate from the guidelines, because guidelines kind of give you a general overview of what the program is. But opening the actual application, you will be able to immediately see what kind of work lies ahead of you in preparing your application. And it allows you to manage your time effectively. You will see that you need bios and sometimes CVs, you need support materials, letters of support. By the way, with letters of support, I'm being asked a lot, do I need a letter of support from the partner in site? The answer is no. The sites actually will tell me, and I will convey that feedback to the assessment panel, what their feasibility assessment of your application is. So you don't need to get their support on your end. Again, first-time applicants talk to the program manager, myself in this case, and of course submit before the deadline. Do not leave it to the very last minute. The granting portal, sometimes gets a bit thoughtful and slow. So the deadline is 11:59 p.m. Interestingly enough, a lot of applications do come in specifically at that time, but I would recommend applying a little bit ahead of time. And and before you do submit, it's good to review and make sure that you have everything that you wanted to submit included. And actually, that is a part of the grant writing tips, which number one is give yourself time. It really does take time to gather project contributors' CVs and bios and to prepare and upload your support material and so on. So for the project contributors, sometimes it's okay not to know entirety of your artistic team. It's fine. You're applying for a grant, who knows if you get it. So maybe you don't have everybody confirmed, but it's important not to include the names of the people who you didn't talk to and who don't know that you put in their name on your application. So, whoever you can confirm or tentatively confirm, include them. Otherwise, you can, if you're building a team, and when you get a grant, you can describe your approach to building a team. Sometimes artists include open call to build their artistic team. You have to be specific about how you are going to do that and so on. Then craft your project summary and overview. Use clear, specific, and direct language, who you are, what you're going to do, and why and how you will do it. Important thing to remember is that this is a multidisciplinary panel. Since, this program gets applications from dancers, theater artists, visual artists, musicians, media artists, filmmakers, I don't know who I forgot, but basically every single discipline that you can imagine, this program gets application from those artists. And there's only usually between 4 and 6 people on the panel. So each of them will have knowledge of 1 or 2 or 3 disciplines, but none of them will have knowledge of all disciplines represented in the application pool because that's just not possible. So in a sense, you want to make sure that you are using very simple language that makes your application clear and accessible to anybody who reads it. The application also asks you for work plan, where you will outline your work timeline, including major actions and tasks. And that part of the application is really kind of showing the panel your knowledge of how to go about executing the project. And it's kind of a big piece of feasibility assessment, which is one of the assessment criteria. You will be asked to include outreach and audience development plan. And it is very important. Sometimes artists write something like, the museum will promote my project and will invite their patrons to come see my show. But actually, you as an artist are leading the outreach and audience development, and the sites will support you with that, and kind of their capacity varies. But you will really lead that process. So that has to be thought through and included with your application to make it compelling. Of course, create a realistic budget. We recommend that administrative costs are not exceeding 10%. Gather support materials, be realistic about what you're showing and how. And I would say artistic support material is really, really important. It's probably one of the most important sections of the application. You cannot include too much because, A, the portal has the limitations, and B, people who are reading the applications are humans with limited capacity. And attention, only goes that far. So make sure you put what you want the panel to see first and really visible, and be kind of curate your support material in a way that it works for your proposal and kind of is aligned with it. It is also a good idea to get feedback on your proposal, not even necessarily like some artistic feedback or from somebody who knows a lot about arts funding or grants, even just giving it to somebody who knows nothing about your practice, just to read and see that it makes sense, could be a great idea. Additionally, if you're a first-time applicant to Toronto Arts Council, you can actually request your feedback, or rather feedback on your draft from the program manager. You can get in touch with me, give me your draft, and I will review it and provide some feedback if you reach out in advance enough. And of course, follow instructions, complete all fields, which the portal will not let you submit if you didn't, and check your application before submitting. So I want to cover, I'm running out of time here, but I want to cover how the applications are assessed. When you write your grant, you don't talk to the government, you don't talk to the funder. You talk to your peers, artists working in multiple disciplines in the city of Toronto, because this is who will be reading your applications and who will be making decisions on the funding recommendations. So they will be assessing your proposal based on assessment criteria, which is artistic merit, extent to which the proposed project responds to or interprets the selected site or museum, quality of experience the proposed activity will provide to visitors and to the local community, demonstrated ability to carry out the project as outlined, and financial viability of the project, including adequate payment of artist fees. And I want to note that demonstrated ability to carry out the project does not mean that only very experienced or resourced applicants get the grants. You might be applying for your very first grant, or you might be applying to do something you haven't done before. What demonstrates ability is not necessarily, you know, oh, I've done it 500 times. It's that your work plan is there, your outreach and audience development plan is there. So you can be very actually convincing about your ability to carry out the project, even, you know, if you're early career artist and you maybe haven't done this specific type of work before. So don't be discouraged by that. Key dates of this grant, and I'm sharing it with you so that maybe you can assess whether you even want to apply, right? Because application and getting funding is not the end of it, it's just the beginning. So July 8th is the application deadline. You will receive your notifications of the results around October 30th this year. And then in fall, winter 2025, the paperwork will be done and the payments will be released by TAC to the successful applicants. And then in January 2026, we will have a program orientation with all program partners, where basically this is kind of like a moment after which, okay, now you're connected to your site and you can fully begin working on your project. Doesn't mean you cannot start earlier. You know, if you know you got a grant on October 30th, you can do some prep work, or, you know, if you're doing something that requires, you know, development, you can start working on that in 2025. But most on-site work will happen in collaboration with the partner on site starting from January 2026. And then the activities will take place in 2026. There is no specific timeline for when the projects can happen. It's kind of like throughout the year and whatever makes sense, but also what works for the partner on site. And that's kind of the first conversation you have after the orientation. What kind of space you need access to, what is already happening there for this particular site. And you go from there figuring it out. Of course, sometimes just some natural considerations are also good to take into account. For example, if you're putting something outside and sinking into the ground, you don't want to be doing it in February when the ground is very hard, and so on. But generally speaking, the scheduling is very flexible. And then once the project is done, the final reports will be due 90 days after project completion date. And that is actually it's not the actual date when you're done with your project, but it's the date that you put in your application saying that this is my approximate completion date. And it is something that can be easily adjusted if needed later on if you get in touch with me. And the last piece of information here is that all major changes must be communicated to the program manager, and of course to the partner that you're working with, to make sure everything goes on smoothly. So as mentioned, all projects must be completed in 2026 calendar year. Again, duration of program will depend on the scale of the proposed activities and the capacity and availability of the museum. Space booking will be subject to availability, and all public programming must be designed carefully with site or museum staff to align with the existing programming. I think that was my that was my second last slide. And one thing I will add is that the kind of the public presentation component is really a significant one in this program. In the beginning, when I was talking about what this program supports, it did sound very broad because it is, and the development and creation can certainly be covered by this grant, but there has to be a public presentation component that engages local community and otherwise the community that comes to the site. And that offering has to be substantial or proportional to the kind of the budget or the grant that you're requesting. And I guess I will talk more when we are in Q&A section. And in the meantime, I'm going to wrap my presentation with a slide with my contact, which I will put in the chat very shortly. Actually, I'll put everything in the chat once I stop sharing my screen. All right. Well, I hope that was helpful to some folks. And now I am going to turn it over to Charlene Pailagi, a curator of public programming at Evergreen Brickworks. And I'm sorry, I think I actually did not say your role correctly. Over to you, Charlene, and you can correct me.
Thanks, Lena. Hi, everyone. My name is Charlene Pailagi, and I'm the curator of public art here at Evergreen Brickworks. I am a Chinese woman with long black hair and clear framed glasses, and I'm sitting in a white boardroom with a window, and I'm wearing a camo shirt. My pronouns are she, her. Yeah, I'm going to do a little bit of an overview of the Brickworks site. And then my colleague Sonya Reynolds will also jump in towards the end. So just to give you an overview of the site, if you're unfamiliar with the Brickworks. Next slide, please. So this is a slide that has a rendering of an outdoor space that is not real. And the text reads, Evergreen is a national nonprofit transforming public spaces in our cities to build a healthier future for people and our planet. Next slide, please. This new image, hopefully I'm not going too fast for ASL, so apologize for that. This next slide shows you the city and the land of Evergreen Brickworks in comparison to the downtown area and shows many trails behind our reclaimed Brickworks facility. So our land does include the former Brickworks factory, as well as City of Toronto parklands managed by the Toronto Region Conservation Authority. And there are the spaces that we are speaking about are more attached to the actual Brickworks facility, not the trail system around it. Just so that is clear. Next slide, please. And just show you a historical image here of what the Brickworks used to be like when it was a place for extraction for the clay removal for brickworks making in the early 20th century. So you can see this is quite a deep crevice. It's what we call the quarry, just to give you that context for what the space used to look like before. Next slide, please. This next image shows you just one of the very many events that we host on site. One of them is a regular farmers market that many of you may know happens on Saturdays between 8 a.m. and 1 p.m. And this is all year round. It's outdoors from May to October and then goes indoors from the remaining months for the winter. So it is year round, and we do, this is of note for those of you applying to Evergreen Brickworks, we do encourage many of our events to sort of happen on market days, just because there is a critical mass of folks visiting who like to see a number of things. So we do prioritize these days for programming. Next slide, please. This is a photo of a group of children sitting around a fire pit. This is the children's garden, which we're currently having renovated as well, which will be ready very soon in time for summer camps. And so this is one of the potential spaces that can be used temporarily for artworks or performances. And that will be ready very soon. Next slide, please. I just show you here a PDF showing you a few projects that we've undertaken as part of our curated program. This is a printout of a mini zine that is of edible native plants of North America. And so we like to make sure that many of our programs can be experienced in different ways. If you can't experience them in person, then maybe sometimes there's also a publication, and that they're accessible in just a number of ways. Yeah, next slide, please. This is an image of the front of a poster it reads a public art notice. And this is something that we've worked on with a number of partners, including the Synthetic Collective, the Center for Sustainable Curating at Western University, and then Bentway, which is a dialogue about sustainable approaches to public art. So I would encourage you to look at our website, and we can provide those links as well later, as something to guide your practice in terms of making public art and art have less of an impact on the environment. Next slide, please. Just show you a recent project that we had by the sibling duo Mani Mazinani and Sanaz Mazinani, which was a temporary walk-in harp structure to title Daska. That's in our North Pavilions area. Next slide, please. And a current installation of these two murals that were painted by the artist Quinn Hopkins for this work entitled Stellar Narratives, an Urban Indigenous Odyssey, which also features augmented reality. So this is one project in which is actually more of a permanent temporary type of installation. So this area is not available, just to show you the range of projects that we have on the site. Next slide, please. We encourage you to visit us. I don't know, Sonya, if you want to hop in here, if this is the time for you. I can also just go over this myself. Okay. Okay.
I'm happy to hop in. Thank you, Charlene. So my name is Sonya Reynolds. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the Senior Manager of Public Programming at Evergreen Brickworks. I work closely with Charlene. So I can say that I'm a white woman in my 40s. I've got straight brown hair, and I'm wearing a magenta shirt. I'm against, this probably looks like a cave behind me because it's all dark. And so I can sort of say a little bit more about our site. So as Charlene said, we have a number of indoor and outdoor spaces. Some of them can be more appropriate for things like performances or shorter term projects. Some of them could host installations or projects that are on the site for longer, like Charlene said. We strongly encourage people, if you haven't already been to our site, to visit the site before you make any sort of a proposal about using our site, because as with many historical sites, it just has many particular and unique features that might lend themselves well or not well to different projects. So we encourage you also in your application to apply with a particular spot in mind, but also with some flexibility so that we can take a look at it and make sure that we can kind of steer it in a direction that could work well for the project. We also have public tours of our site every Saturday. There's one at 11 a.m. and one at 1 p.m. And those tours, one of them is about the history of the site, and one of them is about the natural features of the site. So if you are trying to look at the sites and try to make them make your proposal specific to our site, that's a really good way to learn about the history and the natural features and make sure that it lines up really nicely. And like I say, those are every Saturday and they're free. I can put some of these details into the chat afterwards as well. I will also put into the chat the link to a section of our website where you can see virtual tours of our spaces. Some of those sites that are listed in the virtual tours are appropriate sites for these kinds of projects. Some of them might not be. So what I will do is I'll put all of the links into the chat. But then, like Charlene said, we will be having this site visit. And so what I recommend is anybody who is wanting to propose a project for the Brickworks site to, come to the site and take the tour, and or do the virtual tour, but certainly come to the site visit with us, because that's where we can identify particular spots that will be appropriate for particular seasons. Sheena, I can get to that in one moment. And then the other piece that I want to emphasize, so Charlene talked about how we have the site itself, which is the brickwork site, and then we also have the paths and the quarries and the natural area that is at the sort of northern end of this map. So those areas are not actually part of Brickworks technically. They're the quarry, ponds, and paths are part of City of Toronto and Toronto Regional Conservation Authority areas. So we actually don't have the say in doing any programming on those. We can host programming on the Brickworks site itself. And again, when people come for the site tour, we can show you exactly what that means. So I will also put in the chat a link that shares some information about the accessibility of the site. So both how to get there, so we have a free shuttle, as well as obviously parking and biking, but then also which areas in our site are accessible for people using mobility devices. Many of them are, some of them are less so. So I'll put all of that into the chat. And I will also put into the chat the link to access to come to the site visit on June 17th. Feel free to, there's an email address that I'll put into the chat, and so feel free to send any questions to Alexis, our coworker. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sonya and Charlene. That was great and very informative. Okay, I'm going to switch the slide, and I am going to invite our next partner, Allison White, who is a curator at the Village at Black Creek. Over to you, Allison.
Thanks, Bryna. Good afternoon. My name is Allison White. I'm the curator at the Village at Black Creek. For visual description, I'm a white woman with red hair in a ponytail today, purple glasses. I'm wearing a green collared shirt, and I'm sitting in my home office, which is a little dark, but hopefully you can see me. Our first slide here just shows our main kind of, we call it the main street of the village. So next slide. So I'm excited to share with you how our site is evolving in new and creative ways. You may remember us from your grade 3 field trip. Thousands of students still visit the village every year, but we are definitely not what we were before. So we're proud to be celebrating the 3rd year partnering with the Arts Council for this program. We're reimagining what a historic site can be. The village is becoming a true community commons with the museum at its heart. Here you can commune with the paranormal, brush up on an old skill, interact with visual artists as they work, attend a musical performance, and the list goes on. The photo on this slide is an image of 3 children on a school tour in one of our buildings. They're looking at an artifact with magnifying glasses. Next slide. So what are we today? So we are a living history museum. We're made up of 40 heritage buildings, a collection of 50,000 artifacts, 60 heritage breed animals, and various heirloom gardens. It's a place where history is alive, where the past and the present are meeting in meaningful ways. Some of our buildings still stand on original foundations built over 200 years ago. The remaining 35 structures were relocated from across the region, mostly during the 1960s and 70s. And some of you may remember what we were called before, Black Creek Pioneer Village. Last year, we became the Village at Black Creek, and a name that reflects our renewed commitment to sharing diverse stories of all the communities that have shaped Toronto region. Today, we're really trying to view the village more as a learning campus. So it's an open space for visitors to explore not only history, but engage with arts and events, from concerts to workshops to anything seasonal that can bring our past alive. And the image on this slide is actually an outdoor musical performance with one of the recipients of our TAC grant this year, Fab Club, and they're playing various instruments on one of our village porches. Next slide. So since 2017, we've been intentionally working to reshape our narrative of the site. Guided by 5 First Nations and other valued partners, our goal is to illuminate stories that have been long underrepresented. And we began this initiative, what began as reintegrating Indigenous histories into our programs. It has really grown into a broader commitment, one that weaves together voices and perspectives of multiple underrepresented communities through our site storytelling. And there are 3 images on this slide. The one on the left is a wigwam that was built with community partners Edge of the Bush in 2022. The middle slide is a performance from an Indigenous shawl dancer, Coty Harper, along the village boardwalk in 2024. And the last slide on the right is one of 6 art installations by a Nanook artist, Barry Best, talking about how it's crafted from fallen trees on the property. And this one depicts a wolf. There are 6 other installations as part of this series called Spirit Wind, currently on site. Next slide. So building on this kind of shift in perspective, we've been connecting with more artists through, it really started through our partnership with the Arts Council. Creating these projects and spaces have shaped by their vision and their voice. This slide right here shows an image of 2 people talking in our main gallery. So in addition to having, we're outside living history, we do have a gallery on site, which is about 2,500 square feet of space that has more more permanent exhibit. But we also do have a temporary space within this gallery as well. Next slide. So through this programming over the past few years, it's really led to a creation and a total shift in our programming. And we've created a program called First Saturdays, and it's a monthly series that invites artists and audiences to experience heritage through a contemporary lens. So each month features a different artist, reshaping historical narratives through performance, craft, and storytelling. And on the side of this slide is just an example of some of the demonstrations we've had in the past. We've had spoon carving, weaving, clay pressing, and the projects, the performers that are in our roster for 2025. And the image is just an advertising logo that says First Saturdays through their eyes. Next slide. So between our First Saturday programming and hosting a range of temporary art installations, like the piece you see on this slide by Métis artist Tracy May Chambers, Hope and Healing Canada, the village continues to be a space for creativity and connection. We were really proud, I have this slide in here, we were proud to be the first site to host Hope and Healing back in 2021. And obviously this program has grown across Canada, gaining national recognition for Tracy May Chambers. So we're really proud to support emerging artists, and being part of their creative journey is something we value deeply. And this installation is a textile weaving made with red yarn, and in here they're site specific. So this one, we've had her a few times on site. The one that you're looking at right now is weavings around a tree and along one of our porches, one of our buildings. Next slide. So as part of our 2025 Arts Council programming, we're hosting 2 artist-led projects through performance this year. In the past, we've had workshops and more like not as like large-scale performing pieces. So we're really excited to have different projects on site this year. We're hosting Fab Club in August. They're going to be in 5 or 6 different buildings with performers on site doing different performances. Still not sure on exactly what's happening, but we know it will be a great backdrop for them. And we're also hosting Ready for Access. They're working on reimagining 19th century dances in an inclusive and dynamic performance over 2 days in September. And the image on this slide is another image of Coshi Harbor when she was on site with Fab Club last year, doing shawl dancing along the boardwalk. Next slide. So we are a kind of a multifaceted site where we're trying to do art, music, interactive workshops, along with our regular museum programming. So we're multi-use, from everything from public tours, Wednesday through Sunday, 11 to 4 is when we're open. We also have weddings and nightlife. So lots is happening, but we're always willing to work with the community and the artists to make sure that their stories come to life in a meaningful way. This is from a performance with a group called Enchanta, that's kind of like in the trees within the property, and they're 3 violinists playing. Next slide. And so kind of reiterating a little bit with Evergreen, what they said too, like it's really important when we're hosting an artist open house on Saturday, June 21st, because our site is so multifaceted. It is, about 3 acres. There's different buildings, there's different things, there's different levels of access. We really strongly encourage you to attend, or at least reach out, and always open to talking to anyone through email or for a phone call if they have any questions, because most projects can get done, but we just need a way of creative to making it more accessible for you. That's everything.
Thank you so much, Allison. Appreciate you coming in today. The next partner we're going to invite is Toronto History Museums, and we're going to be hearing from a few speakers since 5 of Toronto History Museums are participating in this program. And to cover Toronto History Museums as a whole, to start us off, I'm going to pass this over to curator Alexandra Kim. Over to you.
Great. Thank you very much, Lena. I'm very happy to be here today. I really love this particular grant stream and the wonderful ways in which it has artists and members of the public engaging with our site. So my name is Alexandra Kim. I'm the administrator for Spadina Museum. I use she, her pronouns. And in terms of a description, I am a white woman with brown hair. It's tied up at the moment. I'm wearing a very patterned dress with a bright yellow chain necklace, and I'm sitting in my office. So I've got a lace curtain behind me and a rather messy bookshelf on the other side. And I just want to provide this overview about Toronto History Museums. If we could perhaps have the next slide. Thanks very much. So who are Toronto History Museums? I have a slide with 10 pictures on of different buildings, and those are the 10 different sites that make up Toronto History Museums. They vary from the exteriors of buildings with beautiful flowers outside to the interior exhibition space, which represents the Market Gallery, and they are all run by the City of Toronto. Most of the Toronto History Museums are open regularly to members of the public, Wednesday to Sunday. And during the pandemic, the city made the commitment that we would have free general admission for all our visitors. So this was a really important commitment, I think, that allows both residents of Toronto, but also visitors to Toronto to come and engage and enjoy our spaces. If we could have the next slide, please. So in terms of our vision and mission, our vision is that we would be leading centres of experiences and critical dialogue about Toronto's past, present, and future. And just as with our colleagues at the village and the brickworks, I think that combination and relationship between past, present, and future is really critical to us. So though we have history in our title, it's really that relationship between the different elements of time and connecting people with that we're interested in. In terms of our mission, we are here to collect, preserve, research, interpret, exhibit, and enhance the understanding of Toronto's diverse stories through engaging and exciting experiences. So we really want to be a place for connection and for community to come together through the wonderful spaces and people that we have. And then if we could have the next slide. So on this next slide, I have the title says MHS Strategic Goals. The MHS stands for Museums and Heritage Services. So we're a section within the Economic Development and Culture Division of the City of Toronto. And I'll explain a little bit about how that informs our work. But these strategic goals come from a plan that we wrote right at the start of the pandemic. And even though we'll be creating very soon a new plan, I still think these goals are really critical in terms of the way they're guiding our work. So the first of these goals is to decolonize Toronto History Museums to advance recommendations of Indigenous voices in Canada. And that work is definitely very much in progress and something that we're all working towards, and also ties in with the city's reconciliation action plan, which is a key part of the work that the city's doing. Our second goal is to create community spaces that are inclusive to all. So rather than just being seen as museums with history, we really want these to be spaces where community and people feel welcome and where they can connect together and to the stories we're telling. Our third goal is about sharing relevant stories from multiple perspectives to support an equitable society. And I think that's one that's really evident in the work that we're doing, thinking about stories that might have been hidden or excluded or forgotten. And even though our spaces are deeply colonial spaces, using them as a springboard to think about really all the histories that might be relevant for Toronto and connecting them to the present day. The fourth goal is revitalizing the visitor experience to ensure equitable access to services and a sustainable financial future. So really thinking about how to help people access the museums, both in terms of physical access, but also thinking about the way in which we're telling stories and the diversity of those. The fifth goal is building capacity to promote sustainable development goals, which help all communities thrive, really thinking about the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals and thinking about what creates healthy and vibrant communities. And the final goal here is championing the creation of a Museum of Toronto that serves as a hub for our existing museums and celebrates Toronto's cultural heritage. And that perhaps maybe is a little less relevant directly to this grant, but it is a good opportunity just to point out that we have an incredible collection of artifacts that we look after as Toronto History Museums, over 100,000 artifacts. And if you look on our website, we have a database. It doesn't have the best search function, but you can find incredible objects that really, again, relate to those wonderful stories of Toronto. So if I could have the next slide. A very new and recent guiding document, one I think that all of our museums are very excited about, is a plan that's been created by our division, the Economic Development and Culture, and really helps to tie us to some of our colleagues within the city, especially Arts and Culture Services, Film and Entertainment, and Business Growth Services. So we kind of have the ability to connect with all of those people, but it's a document called Culture Connects, and it's a 10-year plan to show how the City of Toronto will support culture within Toronto. and has four main goals that I've put down on this slide. I've also put three images. One shows a wonderful paper sculpture of a coyote head installed as if it were a piece of taxidermy in one of our museums. Another shows a young participant painting a banana skin. There was an activity at Mackenzie House. And then a third image shows a wonderful dancer performing with fans inside one of our museum spaces. So the four goals for Culture Connects are culture everywhere, ensuring that culture and creativity are essential components of thriving communities across Toronto, culture for all, that Toronto residents and visitors can discover, create, and access rich, meaningful, and fun cultural experiences, engaging all kinds of creators and audiences. Culture for the future, ensuring that Toronto continues to have a successful and innovative culture and creative sector today and in the future. And culture beyond our borders, solidifying Toronto's recognition globally as a creative capital offering both unparalleled cultural experiences and an environment where creative businesses flourish. And I think as well as offering incredible opportunities for Toronto history museums, I also think that it's a really wonderful demonstration of just how compelling working with artists in these historic spaces can be. And you can see, I think, very clearly how a grant stream like Animating Historic Sites has so much to say to this particular plan and supporting culture in Toronto. So if we could go to the next slide. I'm now going to hand over to my colleague, Pailagi, who'll talk about Scarborough Museum.
Wonderful. Thank you, Alexandra, and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Pailagi Pandya. My pronouns are she, her. In terms of description, I'm a South Asian woman in her early 30s with black hair, purple glasses, as well as wearing a dress that is a dark teal color with South Asian motifs, namely lotuses and paisleys. I'm the museum administrator at Scarborough Museum, and this grant has been really, really pivotal to some of the key work that we're doing at Scarborough Museum in terms of engaging community. So Scarborough Museum is, so on this slide, I have Scarborough Museum written, and then there is a small cartoonish type map of the city of Toronto landscape or geography, and there is a red square that shows a small log cabin inside. Essentially, what this map is showing is that Scarborough Museum is located in Thompson Park at Brimley and Lawrence. As we go through the Toronto History Museum presentations, you will see these maps, and each of these maps will have a square for the site that each administrator is talking about. So Scarborough Museum is where vibrant community stories are celebrated, specifically to our geographic area. We're located in Scarborough, so we work with a lot of community groups, local community hubs, local residents, as well as youth to activate the museum, along with telling and sharing stories from Scarborough's past, present, and working with youth to determine what are some of the needs now in the community and how do we create a better future for all. We also host lots of weekend festivals, summer evening activities, day camps, youth programs, as well as active food waste program. We are part of the heart of everything that goes on in Thompson Memorial Park, and we collaborate across all borders, all communities in Scarborough. Next slide, please. So one of our key goals this year, and strategically the themes that the museum is actively engaging with this year, is home. And the sub-themes that apply to Scarborough Museum within that are cultural exchange and newcomer, So this year, Scarborough Museum is investing in local communities through paid opportunities, collaborative partnerships, and community-led programming that honors storytelling, memory, and cultural expression. By supporting youth-led and community-led initiatives with communities residing in neighborhood improvement areas. So these are areas where there is increased needs around food access, and as well as lack of resources. So the museum is intentionally working with community hubs that are located in these areas to create an impact and work with residents and co-create with them. As well as while we do this, this allows us to amplify lived realities and the ability for the museum to kind of be a conduit or a bridge between personal histories and broader narratives of identity, resilience, and placemaking, along with telling histories of Scarborough's many pasts. Next slide, please. Oh, actually, sorry. On this slide, we have an image of a community group that was put together by the Scarborough Environmental Association. So in terms of activations, we not only support activations outside on our lawn areas, but also inside our historic buildings. Thank you so much. Next slide. So I just wanted to share some past examples of Toronto Arts Council animating historic sites projects. And so last year we worked with ChangeMade, and they worked specifically with the mediums of photography and videography and support local Scarborough youth. And again, it was a very local collective as well. So you can see in this image that I'm sharing is the McCowan Log House, which is one of our historic buildings, and outside of which are the stories that the youth that worked with the ChangeMade collective have captured. And so these are photos of all the community members that were interviewed for the project. So this is like a exhibition style project, but also community oral history paired with matching the realities, because some of these folks that were interviewed were community members and change makers in the community. The next example is Root to Roots, which was a celebration of honoring South Asian heritage, but also pathways and intracultural dialogue around growing up in Scarborough. So this was one of our projects in 2023, and they had hosted a full day of event. And leading up to the event, they had hosted a whole bunch of community co-creative artistic workshops to accumulate as an event, as an exhibition for the community. Back to you, Alexandra.
Thanks, Pailagi. I think it's actually to Lisa.
Lisa.
You're on mute, Lisa.
Thank you very much. I'm very happy to be here and share information about one of the sites that is offering the Animating Historic Sites grant. My name is Lisa Randal, and I go by the pronouns she, her. I am a woman in her early 60s of mixed white Western European heritage. I am wearing some black frame glasses and a gray dress, and behind me are many posters from some of the various activities that have taken place at Todmorden Mills. I like to keep them close to remind me of all the creative spirits that have come through the site and brought so many things to animate and share with community. Todmorden Mills is located in the lower Don Valley, and we're actually very close to our neighbors Evergreen Brickworks, a little bit up the road on Bayview on Pottery Road at 67 Pottery Road. And we are nestled into kind of a bowl. It was once a floodplain, and it is the site of, which spans several hundreds of years of history. Its beginnings one of the first lumber mills in the area in the 1790s, and it grew to become a small industrial community. And the original lumber mill changed to a grist mill and then later to a paper mill, supplying the growing town of York with needed resources for newspaper productions. And the mill continued to make felt paper until 1920, when it was converted into a riding stable. And I will ask to go to the next slide, please. There are many, many layers of history here at Todmorden Mills, pre-colonial, a floodplain, beside the Don River, which was a regular route for Indigenous people that would come down seasonally to fish in Lake Ontario. Todmorden Mills itself is between highways and subways and under bridges and behind trees. It is a cross-section of Toronto, stacked century by century and layer by layer upon itself. From an Indigenous waterway to industrial hub, from a prisoner of war camp to a modern arts and a theater venue, each community has made its mark and added another layer to explore. And the same wealth of natural resources which brought Indigenous people to the Don River Valley has been a magnet drawing settlers, industrialists, workers, artists, and families for centuries. Together, they have shaped what we today call Todmorden Mills into its current role as a vibrant, natural, historic, and cultural landscape. The themes that we are embracing at Todmorden Mills are ecology, which is a very natural, pun intended, focus. We are on 9.2 hectares of land with many trees, a wildflower preserve that has been stewarded for over 30 years by a volunteer group, as well as manufacturing, which is very closely related to the history as a mill. On this slide, there are 5 pictures, and each of these pictures speaks to a different element on the site. In the top right corner is a picture of the paper mill building, the main building itself with the original stack from the mill coming up into a blue sky. And this site hosts a 150-seat theater that is now in what was the riding stable and previously the mill, and also a 2,000-foot art gallery. And the picture to the left is the cottage, as we call it, which is interpreted currently for World War II era. And below the picture of the cottage is a photo of a pathway through the wildlife preserve, and there are some yellow wildflowers on the right. There is a 15-minute pathway through the wildflower preserve, and some of the artists in the past have used it for inspiration for their offerings. Below that picture is a picture of Helliwell House, which is a building where the Helliwell family lived, and workers that would commute by foot over a bridge to the Evergreen Brickworks were housed on the left and lower portion of that building. The last picture on this slide is a picture from this year's Animating Historic Sites artist group, which is Stephen Salette and Coming to the Edge. And it is a picture of a helicopter that is descending very close to the chimney stack of Todmorden Mills. And they are doing a show called Coming to the Edge. And I'm going to talk a little bit about it on the next slide, please. Just a little bit about some of the activations that have happened in the past to speak to the diversity of artists and interpretations, because when we invite artists to come to the site, we really encourage you, as other speakers have mentioned, to come to the site to really get a sense of some of the things that are happening today, have happened in the past, and contribute aspirations of what you may see happening in the future at the site. There was in 2022 Flipping the Canoe, with John Naughton's outdoor installation, which examined the canoe as an instrument of colonization that was co-opted from the Indigenous people and used to access natural resources. And these were outdoor installations on the site. And the one on the left is a silver aluminum structure that is made up of repurposed canoes into a 3D structure that one can walk through and underneath. And to the right is 3 canoes repurposed and in 3 different shapes that look very serpent-like on one of the lawns at the site. In 2023, the site hosted the musical McCoy, which looked at the retelling of Elijah McCoy's life as a Black inventor. This was a play written by Andrew Moody that he then evolved into a musical and looked at the automatic greasing mechanism that was invented by Elijah McCoy. Also in 2023, we had a project by Faris Azam that, as a Syrian refugee, he came to Todmorden Mills and learned about the prisoner of war camp that was housed at one point on this site. And he took a project and envisioned Syria's most notorious prison and imagined it as an art center. And he taught the youth how to make 3D sculptures and then film those sculptures in filmmaking workshop for Arabic-speaking youth. And last year we had Reconciliation, which was 2D art with a mentorship relationship with Mike Ormsby and Niall Johnston, and that took place in the gallery. And then coming to the one that is happening this year, by aiding dramatic change, a site-specific, immersive, participatory, theatrical, and ritual event emphasizing inclusion and accessibility. And many of the artists will be in mobility devices, and they will be taking the audience through a series of spaces on the site. They'll be outside, above, moving through the gallery, and then into the theater. And in terms of accessibility, the site does have some accessibility features. There is an elevator to the theater. There is a ramp to the upstairs brewery building. There are 4 accessible parking spots. And we also have several audio interpretations of historic panels that are at the site. I think I should probably conclude now. And thank you very much for listening and being interested. Looking forward to learning more. Thank you.
Hello. Hi, my name is Emmanuel Brown. My pronouns are he, him. I am a mixed race man of Black, white, and Indigenous descent. And I am wearing a brown button-up, and I will speak to Gibson House. So on this slide, there is a navy background with Gibson House written in white letters, and we are also using the same map that the rest of the Toronto History Museums have been using. And Gibson House is outlined, and there is a picture of the farmhouse. Next slide, please. Okay, so Gibson House is on Yonge Street and Parkholme Avenue, which is sitting between Yonge and Shepherd and Yonge and Finch. It is also located only 5 to 8 minute walk away from North York Center TTC subway station. And now I will speak to what is on the slide. So on this slide here, we have an image, a black and white photo image of Gibson House. This would be the road that leads up to Gibson House, or would have been the former road that led up to Gibson House. And in the photo, you can see the house. You can kind of see the house in the background, nestled between trees. And now I will speak to Gibson House a bit more. So for Gibson House, return to a home you never knew you missed with a visit to Gibson House, a 19th century farmhouse hidden between the high rises of North York. Step across the threshold and back in time to the 1850s kitchen and feel welcomed by the warm aroma of wood smoke and beeswax. Explore how David Gibson, Scottish immigrant, land surveyor, farmer, politician, and rebel, put his mark on a community, a city, and the province. And Gibson House offers visitors an opportunity to taste, smell, and touch history in a way that few other museums can. And let your senses come alive in this engaging historical family home. I just want to emphasize that our themes for this year and for the years to come as well are making by hand and farm life. So that is what we're focused on at Gibson House. Next slide, please. And I will pass this to my colleague, Claire Ricci.
Excuse me. Sorry, I have a bit of laryngitis today. My name is Claire Ricci. I'm the museum coordinator here at Gibson House. For visual purposes, I'm a white woman with glasses, brown hair tied back in a bun, and a nice pink shirt for today. I just wanted to briefly add on to what Emmanuel was talking about for Gibson House, and basically just to say that we've been fortunate to work with quite a number of really great artists who have interpreted the story of the house in so many different ways. And in so many different aspects. We've been able to have, excuse me, live performances, 3D installations, video installations, photography, sculpture, outdoor installations, and just spatially interesting things throughout the house. It's very flexible and is very sort of welcoming to all of the different things that artists are looking to explore in the space. And we're looking forward to seeing what will come this year. And I will pass on to our next of the THM. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks very much, Claire. So it's Alexandra back again to talk about Spadina Museum in my role as administrator at Spadina. And on this slide, we again have the same map, and the red square here indicates that Spadina is at the very sort of edges of the main sort of core downtown. Often we help to situate ourselves by saying we're next to Casa Loma at 285 Spadina Road, right on the edge of the escarpment, which is a really good reminder of continued Indigenous presence and the fact that the name Spadina comes from the Anishinaabe word Ishpadina. If we can have the next slide. So Spadina Museum is a national historic site. The house, as we have it at the moment, was built by the Austin family, who were a privileged settler colonial family. They bought the land in 1866 and constructed this mansion. We have it displayed as it might have looked when the family lived there in the 1920s and 30s. And the house itself sits amongst 5.7 acres of grounds, which include lawns, orchard, kitchen garden. But we are really interested in using the space as a springboard to think about a whole variety of histories and narratives and really connect those to the present. As well as bringing that space alive. So in the pictures that I have here, one in the upper left shows the front hallway, the interior, sort of a space with dark wallpaper and a rug on the floor, showing the grandeur of the home. Then there is a picture with a bushel of apples in the foreground and visitors enjoying the grounds outside the house at our fall festival. a lower image shows a portrait of a Black woman, Louisa Pipkin, who we know as a freedom seeker who came to Canada and worked for the Austen family and was the focal point for an incredible exhibition called Dismantle that we held in 2022. And then finally, an image of people dressed in 1920s clothing from our garden party last year, which really animated the grounds. So as I say, really using the house and grounds as a springboard for telling stories from multiple perspectives. And you heard my colleagues mentioning different themes. We have the theme of comfort and really interrogating comfort for whom, who helps to produce that comfort, and the idea of a changing city, and that focus on the idea of the 1920s and 30s, and really thinking about how Toronto is changing for many different people living here at that time. If I could have the next slide. So just to very quickly think about some of the projects that we have had in the past, again, as people have really emphasized, working with a wonderful variety of artists. And I really appreciate the fresh eyes that different art forms can bring to thinking about these historic sites. So there is a picture here of a series of large-scale lanterns of fish that was a wonderful project done with Red Pepper Spectacle Arts and artist Joseph Sadje, thinking about the return of salmon to the waterways of Toronto. And then from last year, a beautiful black and white photograph showing the outside of our palm room and 3 dancers that was taken last year when Nova Dance created a piece called Offerings at Spadina. So a kind of sample of some of the great projects we've had. Now over to our last Toronto History Museum's presenter, Bryna.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Alexandra. My name is Bryna Tallman, and I use she and they pronouns. I am a light olive-skinned person with curly, silvery long hair. And I'm in my office, which also kind of looks like a library. And I'm here to speak about Montgomery's Inn. So Montgomery's Inn, you will see again, we have a map with Montgomery's Inn being the furthest west point. And it is located at 4709 Dundas Street West, which is Dundas and Islington. We are quite close to the Islington subway station, a short 10-minute walk. We also have free parking and an accessible lift. Next slide, please. So Montgomery's Inn was built in the 1830s to shelter travelers. Montgomery's Inn brought people together from the surrounding area and beyond over food, drink, games, and more. And over 190 years later, we're still doing just that. So when you come to the inn, you'll hear diverse stories of people who traveled here. For example, the Chinese market gardeners who called this place home, and previous employees who escaped enslavement through the Underground Railroad and ended up at Montgomery's Inn. So the photo on the right is a watercolor painting of the inn. It's a stone building, and in front you can see horses and tall grasses, as it would have been farmland. Our themes for next year are hospitality and clubs and associations. Next slide, please. So on this slide, I wanted to highlight a few of the Montgomery's Inn opportunities. So we obviously have the historic building. We have a wonderful historic kitchen where we light fires in the hearth. We do cooking demonstrations. We also have a tavern where we host games, and previously there have been music and other animations in there as well. We have a regular Wednesday farmers market from 2 to 6. And in this, you can also see the photos of everything I'm describing. So the farmers market, you can see a number of vegetables laid out on a table. We also have gardens. We have some patios and 2 large community rooms. One we call the community room or tea room. This is in the basement of our building and it holds about 70 people. We've done a lot of projects in there. The Brierly room is a more modern room that holds about 50 people and has large windows. And we also have a commercial kitchen as well. And I did want to highlight some of the pieces that have been here at the inn previously. So in 2023, we welcomed Newcomer Women's Services Toronto, of which I actually got to be a part of, with a newcomer-led artist who was an art therapist as well. We looked at the archival images of the inn and discussed stories from that time and the newcomer women who were part of the project. And in 2024, Lucy Rupert, who was part of Blue Ceiling Dance, did a number of animations in the historic building, outside, and particularly inspired by the nature around. And then in this year, we have Rekindling Our Light, which is a community-led activation that really activates the land. So there have been nature walks, storytelling, art making, songs, working with Indigenous artists, Alan Cooley, Aqua Nibby, and doing a number of different types of art making, clay workshops, painting, weaving, and storytelling and food. Thank you so much. I'll pass it back.
Thank you, Bryna, and thank you to all presenters. That was great. And if the attendees felt that maybe that's a lot of information, remember you only need to pay attention to one side or maybe 1 or 2 sides if you're still deciding what is the side for your project. And with that, we're going to wrap up. Thank you again, everybody, for attending, and good luck with your applications if you decide to apply. I'm always available to support, and please do get in touch with the sites that you choose to get more information as needed. Thank you, everyone.